Okay, let's unpack this. For years, I mean, for as long as I can remember, every time YouTube makes a big structural change, demonetization, new policies, new formats like short, we hear the same thing.
The same collective groan.
Exactly. The algorithm is broken, or they don't care about the creators who built this platform. It's become this predictable, almost annual ritual.
It really has. But what if that whole discussion, that familiar debate, is actually distracting us from something much, much bigger?
A more fundamental truth.
Yes. Our sources for this deep dive, and we've got a stack of detailed video breakdowns, some specific industry reporting, they all suggest that these recent, really aggressive changes are not just another tweak.
We're talking about the mass channel bans, the AI misfires, the huge cost-cutting efforts.
All of it. The sources are arguing that this is evidence of a fundamental, almost tectonic corporate pivot.
And that's our mission today. We're going to dive into the theory that YouTube is actively and very deliberately shifting its core identity, moving away from that sprawling, chaotic, creator-driven video archive that we've all known for almost 2 decades.
And transforming into a direct, polished competitor to the centralized giants. We're talking Netflix, the major cable TV.
The sources are pretty clear on this. They assert that Google has a 5, maybe 10-year plan here, and when the dust finally settles, the YouTube you use today will look, well, drastically different.
And the driving force, as it almost always is with these massive corporate movements, it isn't some grand creative vision. It's pure, unadulterated profit max.
Specifically, it's about addressing and reducing these massive operational costs, getting rid of what they clearly see as dead weight within their own infrastructure.
I think if you frame the discussion around that intersection, corporate efficiency, real cost of infrastructure, and how content is monetized, then all these seemingly aggressive actions, like using AI to swiftly and sometimes very inaccurately purge channels,
they start to make a kind of cold, hard financial sense.
Exactly. We need to analyze the why behind all these moves, because they signal this non-negotiable shift in power,
right.
A shift away from the independent creator and towards the corporate curator.
It's a critical distinction to make. The sources say the days of what they call maximum Darwinism, where the audience, the viewers, decided who won and lost, are being systematically engineered out of existence.
They are.
Okay, so let's jump right into the first pillar of this pivot then. The core thesis is pretty simple when you boil it down. YouTube is going Hollywood.
Exactly. That's the alleged end goal here. YouTube wants to leave the low-budget, high-variance, unpredictable content behind. The priority now is polished, professionally produced content.
And when you say professionally produced, are we talking about like traditional Hollywood budgets, millions of dollars per episode?
Not necessarily. That's the clever part. The ideal model isn't about matching Hollywood's spending dollar for dollar, but about matching its aesthetic.
So high production value, standardized formats, reliable quality.
Exactly. And this polished content is then presented as a premium offering, something designed to look and feel like HBO Max or Amazon Prime when you're browsing it.
But hold on, doesn't this platform have a history of trying to pivot into premium content while failing?
Yeah.
I'm thinking way back to YouTube Red or those earlier attempts to fund originals that just didn't quite stick.
That's a crucial question.
What specific evidence in the sources makes this attempt different? Why should we believe it's more likely to succeed this time?
And that's a fair challenge. I think the difference this time isn't just about, funding a few creators here and there. It's about integrating themselves into the entire consumer viewing ecosystem.
Oh, okay.
The most concrete proof point that our sources cite for this deep Netflix ambition isn't some leaked internal memo. It's the strategic integration and massive expansion of YouTube.
So they're using their existing distribution power to compete directly with cable, not just trying to lure users to some separate subscription tab on the website.
Precisely. They are leveraging their position. So let's get specific on that integration because the details matter. We have evidence that genre bundles are coming to YouTube TV, and they could be launching as soon as the next calendar year. And it's the structure of these bundles that's the real weapon.
The structure is the competitive edge. How so?
Well, they're offering cheaper and just far more flexible plans than traditional cable or even current streaming competitors. Historically, if you wanted to watch ESPN, you had to buy a massive bundle of 50 other channels. Never ever.
The classic cable package nightmare.
Right. And YouTube is looking to completely dismantle that model.
And we're not talking about a small selection. The sources detail that more than 10 genre-specific packages are planned. We're talking dedicated sports bundle, distinct news package, family collections, entertainment offerings.
It's a huge undertaking.
It doesn't just feel like video distribution. It feels like the complete reincarnation of cable television, but, optimized for the internet generation. And it's all leveraging YouTube's existing technical back.
That optimization is exactly what makes the threat so real to the old guard. Let's take the sports plan, for example, which is specifically mentioned in the source material. It's planned to include major broadcast network offerings offering FS1, NBC Sports, and of course, the big one, ESPN.
Sure, but what's so strategic about that? I mean, you can already get those channels elsewhere.
The strategy is twofold. First, they simplify the consumption. Everything is in one place, one bill, one interface. But second, and this is the key, these bundles are being designed to make the really lucrative, expensive add-ons like NFL Sunday Ticket, which YouTube recently paid billions for.
Okay, I see.
Or the Red Zone channel, incredibly easy, almost mandatory for the consumer to integrate. They become the central, can't-miss hub for all premium live sports.
Which is a guaranteed recurring revenue stream that justifies the entire high-cost infrastructure they're building.
Absolutely. The intent is crystal clear. This isn't just some separate niche product anymore. It's the new corporate pillar. The source material actually quotes Christian Olsen Iwan, who's YouTube's subscription.
What does he say?
He's on record discussing how they are working with their media partners to get them excited about what the future of television could look like.
When you hear language like that, that's not just marketing speak. That is a declaration of strategic intent against DirecTV, against Hulu, against any incumbent linear TV provider. They are making a play to take over the living.
And if we connect that goal back to the fate of the independent creator, the implications become incredibly stark. YouTube is dedicating massive financial resources and, the corporate negotiation power of Google itself.
Not to improve support tools for individual creators.
Not at all. But to become a centralized, regulated, multi-billion-dollar distributor of professional content. The whole machine, the infrastructure, the monetization focus, even the algorithm is shifting to support this new television model.
This brings us to a really telling and almost kind of mournful point in the source material. If YouTube is aggressively moving toward this Hollywood model, what happens to the independent creators, the ones who built the platform's early identity?
They get left.
The sources point to a very symbolic, very deliberate act that signals the closing of the book on that original messy era, the quiet unlisting of the annual YouTube Rewind video.
That symbolic act is just fascinating. It's fascinating precisely because of what the rewinds actually represented. For all their attempts to be curated and, their occasional spectacular failures to reflect real trends.
Oh, definitely. Some of them were legendary failures.
But fundamentally, the rewinds were a celebration of the You chapter of You, the unpredictable, creator-driven, emergent culture.
They showcased the popular creators and highlighted trends that were promoted by raw viewer choice. The source calls this maximum Darwinism. It was survival of the fittest, based on audience engagement, not some corporate committee in a boardroom selecting the stars.
It was messy, it was often controversial, but it was authentic to the platform's root.
And so by unlisting those videos, what's the message?
The message is that they're trying to manage future perception. It's a very conscious effort to close that. They're preventing future users from easily accessing that history and feeling that, that pang of nostalgia.
That feeling of old YouTube used to be so much better when independent creators were genuinely the face of the whole platform.
It's corporate revisionism through digital erasure. If you can remove the documentation of the wild, chaotic past, you have much better control over the narrative of the polished professional.
So the focus now is exclusively on promoting the standardized, professionally palatable face that YouTube wants to present to its new major media partner. It's not about celebrating the unpredictability that the viewers elevated organically.
In short, the platform is pivoting hard to Hollywood. But to successfully complete that pivot, they have to tackle the second and arguably even more critical issue, the fundamental astronomical infrastructure cost of hosting the entire world's video library.
That's the perfect segue into Section 2. This is where we need to address the financial imperative behind what the sources are calling the Purge strategy. Let's talk about cost, bandwidth, and the dramatic deployment of AI disruption.
The financial picture, according to our sources, is, well, if not dire, then at least strategically problematic. YouTube is cited as not being a super profitable endeavor.
Which sounds crazy to most people, right? Given the revenue.
It does. It generates enormous revenue, of course, but it also bleeds out money due to absolutely massive hosting expenses.
And this is the hidden cost of the internet's greatest archives, isn't it? We often forget the sheer physical infrastructure required to store and serve literally billions of video files globally, simultaneously, 24/7.
We do. And the sources point specifically to the channels that are the biggest drain on that infrastructure. We're talking about millions of channels that suck up hosting space and bandwidth with very little financial return.
Especially those attempting live streams for only, as the source puts it, a couple of people.
And that distinction between different types of content hosting, that's the key technical insight here. Traditional video on demand, or VOD, is actually relatively efficient.
How so?
Well, once a file is uploaded, it gets compressed, it's encoded once, and then it's stored in these highly efficient caches all around the globe. So when 1 million people watch it, they're just pulling that same compressed static file from the cache that's closest to them.
It's like sending a postcard. It's prepackaged, and it's cheap to deliver over and over again.
That's a great analogy. But live streaming is a completely different beast. It is far more expensive.
Exponentially so, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. Live streaming requires continuous dedicated server uptime. You have to allocate ingress points for the stream coming in, you have to manage real-time encoding and compression dynamically, and you have to maintain continuous egress, the stream going out to all the viewers.
You can't just cache a live stream efficiently because the content is always changing, second by second.
You can't. It is the difference between sending one postcard, like you said, and maintaining a continuous, multi-million-person dedicated video conference network for hours and hours on end. That requires dedicated infrastructure that just cannot be easily shared or repurposed until that stream ends.
Wow. That immediately puts the financial motivation for targeting live streams into such sharp focus.
Yeah.
The sources provide a pretty chilling anecdote here, citing the Twitch streamer Asmongold.
Yes, and he calculated that his streams alone cost Twitch, which, faces very similar hosting challenges, millions of dollars a year.
Million for one streamer.
So if one high-profile streamer costs millions, just try to imagine the aggregate cost of millions of smaller streamers, many of whom are generating almost zero ad revenue.
Then YouTube's corporate logic becomes ruthlessly clear.
It does. They are moving to aggressively get rid of content and creators who cost the platform more in hosting, in bandwidth, and in maintenance than they actually generate in predictable ad or subscription. It's the ultimate cost-benefit analysis, but applied to every single user account.
And this is where the AI becomes the instrument of this purge. The claim from the sources is that YouTube is using the opportunity presented by this big corporate pivot, what one source called the fog of war, surrounding major platforms,
to make radical, fast changes to who is even allowed to remain on the platform.
By quickly and efficiently purging channels using these automated tools. It's like they're consolidating the platform under the guise of general moderation. But the true goal is just pure resource management.
The speed and the scale are things that are simply impossible for humans. And the sources support this notion by pointing to the parallel staff reductions that are happening. YouTube is reportedly offering voluntary buyout employees amid this AI.
So if they're shedding human staff, they are actively diminishing human moderation oversight at the precise moment they're undertaking these mass purges.
It's a dangerous combination. The efficiency argument isn't just about faster banning. It's about making the entire moderation process economically viable. AI is being deployed because they simply don't have enough humans to get rid of channels manually at the scale required to meet their cost reduction targets.
So they need a highly optimized triage system. And if that system makes a mistake, well, the corporate cost of the mistake is lower than the infrastructure cost of letting that channel continue to exist.
That is the brutal calculus of a platform operating at this scale. The sources suggest YouTube is using AI to just quickly go through and purge channels for whatever reason, even if it's a bullshit reason, just to get them off the platform and reduce that resource in some.
It's an operational mandate rooted in finance. It's not a moral or a content quality mandate.
Not at all.
And speaking of those high costs, the sources speculate that live streaming, precisely because of those astronomical hosting expenditures, is likely the next wave to be targeted for either elimination or, at the very least, severe restriction.
It's the logical conclusion of the profit pivot. If a significant percentage of live streams are running to minimal audiences and consuming massive bandwidth, they are a pure financial. The speculation points toward two potential outcomes for the future of live on the platform, and both of them are very.
What's the first potential outcome?
The first is that live streaming privileges will be reserved only for vetted. So these are creators who they're guaranteed will generate substantial, predictable ad, and critically, people who are known not to say dumb shit live.
And that last part is so key. For a platform that is aspiring to be a professional, bundled TV service, selling themselves to Disney and NBC unpredictable live content is a massive brand safety liability.
It's pure chaos. It introduces chaos, which is the absolute antithesis of the Hollywood aesthetic they were striving for. They want and need total control over the message.
But if they push independent creators toward this kind of vetted system, which, let's be honest, many won't qualify for, isn't there a risk that this just drives those creators and their passionate audiences to competing platforms? Places like Twitch or Patreon or other community-based streaming sites. Doesn't that undercut the whole profit maximization effort.
That is the strategic risk they are taking, yes. But the sources imply that YouTube is betting on its scale. They seem to be willing to sacrifice the low-yield creators to secure the high-yield professional bundle. They believe the audience they might lose by alienating the independent plebs is statistically insignificant compared to the guaranteed revenue streams from sport, news, and entertainment bundles.
So it's about sacrificing the fringe to secure the center. What's the second potential outcome for independent live streamers who don't get into that vetted program?
The second outcome is even stark. Independent creators will have to pay YouTube for the ability to live. This completely transforms a free-to-use publishing service into a paid utility for the creators who are deemed unprofitable. It's a model that mirrors smaller existing streaming platforms or cloud hosting services where the user, the creator, carries the hosting costs themselves.
That essentially turns the creator into a customer rather than a partner in any real sense. It moves the financial burden directly onto the small players, which, that further reinforces the purge mechanism by making low-volume creators economically self-eliminate.
It creates an almost impossible barrier to entry for the next generation of independent streamers. You'd need money and you'd need to already be successful to justify the money you're spending. The sources are very clear. This entire aggressive, rapid consolidation is about an operational mandate to clear resource consumption and make room for the professionally funded content that is now central to their new business.
And when you engage in that kind of automated, large-scale culling, there is inevitable collateral damage. And that leads us directly into Section 3, the very real, very human cost of AI moderation gone terribly, terribly wrong.
The human cost is immediate, and it's often catastrophic for the individual creators who get caught in this dragnet. And this specific story perfectly illustrates the fatal flaw in relying on automated, high-speed moderation when your objective is mass culling and resource management over accuracy. We have this compelling case study of the Pokemon YouTuber Splash.
This is truly a staggering illustration of algorithmic failure. So, Splashplate was banned under YouTube's circumvention policy. Can you just quickly clarify what that policy is typically supposed to target?
Of course. The circumvention policy is designed to stop banned users from just creating new channels to evade their original termination. So if your primary channel gets banned for, say, hateful conduct, and you immediately try to upload the exact same content to a new channel, the AI is supposed to catch you trying to circumvent the ban.
A pretty sensible rule on its face. But the reality of the Splashplate case was the complete opposite of that malicious intent.
Exactly. The source material explains the technical error in detail. Another completely separate, likely imposter account, an account named Evolution Army, had re-uploaded Splashplate's own viral content.
Which happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
Especially with shorts.
It's a constant problem. So Evolution Army was then terminated for whatever violation they committed. And here's where the automation just completely breaks.
This is the critical failure.
YouTube's AI, looking for patterns of circumvention, mistakenly matched the content from the terminated Evolution Army channel back to its original source, which was Splashplate's legitimate primary channel. And it determined that Splashplate was the one trying to circumvent the ban.
Wait, so the AI concluded the original creator was the imposter trying to get around a ban on a channel that stole their content.
That's it. It's a staggering failure of basic data correlation. And what makes this case so heartbreaking is the inevitable appeal process. Despite all the proof, the existing video watermarks, the clear timeline of original uploads, the history of the channel, and despite desperate attempts to contact YouTube support, the decision was deemed absolute and final as of...
The system had rendered its final judgment.
And that judgment is nearly impossible to overturn for a smaller creator. The user just received these cold, automated responses confirming the ban would remain, with the system repeatedly affirming that the user was circumventing. The source notes that Splashplate was convinced the automated staff, if they were human at all, likely didn't even read the tweet or watch the video they...
This really highlights a core institutional problem within Google, doesn't it? One of the sources drew a parallel to their own experiences dealing with, years-long AdSense freezes over click fraud that wasn't their fault. Once the big Google machine registers a fraudulent action or a policy violation, getting that ban overturned becomes this immensely difficult multi-year endeavor, regardless of the proof you have.
It's the consequence of being a non-priority user on a platform of this immense size. The volume of appeals is just so high that any human review is cursory at best, and the corporate culture often dictates that once a ban is in effect, it's exceptionally hard to reverse, even if it's based on a clear error.
So for small channels like Splashplate, you're just stuck in this automated purgatory. As the sources noted, you basically need to reach a critical mass, a certain number of subscribers and traffic, to secure a human partner manager who actually has the administrative power to go in and manually override the automated system.
And with YouTube offering these voluntary buyouts to staff, securing that human lifeline is getting exponentially harder. The automation is supposed to be working with humans, but the humans are actively out of the process.
That is the exact irony that was perfectly captured by the YouTube star Moist Critical when he weighed in on this issue. He specifically highlighted that the platform is punishing the real innocent person, not the actual imposter or the violator.
His analysis was very sharp. He noted that the heavy reliance on these AI moderation tools results in what he just flatly called daily fuck,
which directly challenges YouTube's official claim that human members of the moderation team work with AI to look over these cases. The daily reality, especially for smaller channels without a partner manager, suggests that this claimed human oversight is either totally non-existent or completely incapable of correcting these blatant algorithmic mistakes.
The AI has become the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And when its primary directive is rapid, large-scale resource culling, well, accuracy for the individual is a very distant secondary.
And to make the whole moderation system feel even more arbitrary and, frankly, driven by profit, the sources highlighted this bizarre phenomenon of what they call the shorts paradox and selective enforcement of the rule.
This paradox is a fantastic, completely transparent illustration of how immediate business incentives can just override any sense of moderation consistency. The observation is this: content creators can post a 3-minute short using large amounts of copyrighted Hollywood footage clips from Star Trek, anime, major motion pictures, and often face no immediate penalty.
But if they use the exact same material in a 10-minute long-form video,
the video is immediately pinched, it's flagged, or it's just taken down.
Why the massive discrepancy? I mean, if copyright is the rule, it should be enforced consistently across all formats using the same material, shouldn't it?
You'd think so. But it all comes back to that cost-benefit analysis at work. The inferred reason cited by the sources is purely financial and operational. Shorts are pushed heavily by the algorithm because they are highly engaging, they monetize exceptionally well now, and, crucially, they cost far, far less to host than long-form video.
They're short, they're sticky, and they're financially efficient for you.
So if the content is highly profitable and resource-light, YouTube seems to be willing to selectively enforce copyright, or at least slow the enforcement mechanisms down to benefit the platform's own engagement metric.
But if the content is long form, meaning it costs more in storage and bandwidth, the enforcement is immediate and automated because that reduces the drain on their resources.
Precise. This discrepancy basically proves that the primary motivation for moderation isn't maintaining a coherent standard of intellectual property protection or moral content. It is financial utility and infrastructure. They police the cost centers and they tolerate the profit.
So, if this pivot is aggressively underway, if the hosting costs are being cut through these automated purges, and if AI is eliminating the unwanted, what does the platform actually look like for those creators who managed to remain? We need to look at Section 4, the new content hierarchy and the unfortunate status of the independent creator.
The future platform, according to our sources, will operate on a very distinct and very rigid 2-tier system. The Hollywood content, the professional bundles, the high production value offerings designed to attract major media partners, that will all be front and center. Promoted, prioritized, unavoidable.
And the independent creators, the millions of small channels uploading niche content, the plebs, as one source rather harshly put it. What happens to their content? Will they just be delisted?
They won't be eliminated entirely, but they will be functionally invisible. They can still upload their videos, but the algorithm will simply not promote them to the general audience, especially not to those who are accessing the platform via the new TV bundle.
So they'll exist on the platform, yes, but they will be quarantined from the broader curated audience that YouTube is trying to capture and sell to its new television partner.
It's a digital quarantine.
This aligns perfectly with the artist alley analogy that one of the sources provided, comparing the independent creator space to the side hustle at a massive professional convention.
It's a perfect visual analogy that really drives home the marginal. You have the celebrity meet and greet area for the polished content. That's the area with the best lighting, security, clean carpets, heavy, visible and then you have the independent creators who are relegated to the artist alley,
which is often located in some distant corner, sometimes next to the fire exit or the bathroom, and it's easily forgotten by the main crowd.
They are allowed to be there, but they are marginalized and functionally ignored by the platform.
And this relegated. It isn't just about what gets seen today. The sources argue that part of the ongoing algorithm change is strategically designed to spread out views and actively prevent the rise of a new, single, unpredictable face of the platform.
That is a crucial strategic move, and it's driven by corporate risk mitigation. The era of a PewDiePie or a Mr. Beast rising up purely because viewers liked them and rooted for the underdog, that's being engineered out. And the reason is, why would you want?
Because a single massive personality, especially one built on that unpredictable maximum Darwinism, introduces massive corporate and brand safety. If that one person makes a mistake, the entire brand.
Exactly. YouTube doesn't want its global brand identity tied to one single volatile personality. They want the face of the platform like Hollywood.
The source cited Pedro Pascal as a kind of perfect example of the desired aesthetic.
Predictable, polished, commercially vetted, and easily contained within professional structure. And so the algorithm is transformed into a tool of corporate control. It guarantees that only content that fits the new, standardized, Hollywood palatable vision gets that mainstream exposure, while anything unpredictable, messy, or low budget is just left to languish in the art.
This whole dynamic brings us to the core identity for independent creators who rely on the platform. They are essentially digital sharecroppers.
That phrase just perfectly encapsulates the creator status on these mega platforms. Independent creators are operating entirely on Google's land, under Google's rules. They have no meaningful contract, no lease. They are engaging in digital labor, absolutely, but they have no true ownership or security over the mechanism of their distribution.
You're renting the land and the infrastructure from the corporation.
And the inevitable result of that arrangement is a near total lack of recourse or any real negotiating power. YouTube can eliminate a channel for whatever reason, arbitrary or otherwise, because the creator has no contractual protection.
Even if big creators complain, even a Mr. 50 million subs, doesn't fundamentally matter to this corporate pivot, does it?
And that's the bitter pill to swallow. The sources point out that Google isn't looking at one individual subscriber count. They are looking at the entire corporate ecosystem and their 5 or 10-year financial plan, which is anchored by these TV bundles. The decisions are based purely on aggregate numbers and profitability.
Which makes individual creator backlash, no matter how loud it gets, ultimately irrelevant to the overall strategic shift.
It's a complete imbalance of power. And this exercise of control isn't just limited to YouTube's video sphere. The sources provide a really compelling example of Google exercising this overarching control across its other platforms, which demonstrates the sheer magnitude of the power imbalance that creators and publishers are facing.
Right. They talked about the publishing ecosystem outside of video.
Exactly. Google is now reportedly using AI to rewrite established publishers' headlines to appear in services like Google Discover. It often makes them more clickbait, more algorithmically palatable, or just shorter to fit the system's needs.
So this is Google asserting control over a publisher's actual intellectual property and its presentation.
It is. So even if you are a major news organization or a successful publisher, Google can unilaterally decide how your content is presented to its users. It demonstrates the total lack of true control creators have over their own work when they rely on Google's infrastructure for distribution. You are simply operating entirely within Google's world, and their rules are always subject to change based on their corporate priorities.
Okay, so let's synthesize the 3 pillars we've established here. The strategic, non-negotiable move to premium bundles, the critical need to aggressively reduce infrastructure costs, and the implementation of this efficient, rapid AI purging to clear the deck. Now we need to bring it all home.
Well, if we connect these strategies to the bigger picture, the mass bans and the reliance on AI are not just isolated technology they are tactical measures within a grand corporate strategy.
A strategy designed to achieve
what? Maximum profitability, and they do that by drastically reducing hosting, especially for high-cost, low-yield content like small live streams, and most importantly, clearing the structural and the cultural way for YouTube to transition into a regulated, high-quality, Hollywood-centric streaming service, one that's focused on bundles and predictable, professionally produced content.
So what does this all mean for you, for the listener? The sources are suggesting that this fundamental shift is completely non-negotiable. The corporate mindset, which looks strictly at numbers and profitability, means that any creator backlash or a public outcry, it's not going to stop the change.
It won't, because the underlying business decisions that non-profitable channels cost too much money to host are likely financially correct from Google's trillion-dollar perspective.
So the era of independent, viewer-promoted content, what the sources called maximum Darwinism, is being deliberately phased out.
It's being replaced by centralized, commercially palatable content. The platform is choosing predictable revenue and brand safety over unpredictable community. One source refers to this shift as end-stage capital. That moment, a platform prioritizes financial efficiency over the very community that gave it its initial growth.
That makes the future look very, very different, especially for anyone who's just starting out today. Since Google is looking purely at those financial numbers and efficiency metrics, and I mean, they're probably right that non-profitable channels consume too much infrastructure.
So consider this. Where, if anywhere, will the next generation of truly independent, low-budget, viewer-promoted content find a scalable, sustainable home? Given the immense and ever-increasing cost of large large amounts of video, and the inevitable corporate desire for profit maximization across every single major platform, that independent Darwinistic model might be functionally extinct on the internet at the scale we want.
The platform that was once open to everyone is now strategically excluding the unprofitable.
That's the ultimate challenge for the future of digital creativity, trying to find an environment where cost doesn't dictate content.